Well, the election of Republican Donald Trump sent shockwaves across the world last week, and joining us now in Washington for his thoughts on the election is Channel's reporter Ayetunde Balogun. Welcome to Africa 54.
It's great to be here, Vincent.
Now, first, you came at the most opportune time. You were there in Nigeria observing how things were going on over here. Then you came here at that most critical time. Share with me, what were your perspectives, especially observing the process in the last minutes?
Well, Vincent, it's quite a remarkable experience, I have to tell you. I mean, watching events as they unfolded, from outside, in Nigeria, you had this feeling that, yes, it was going to be an historic election. The whole world kept their eyes glued, to the media and of course, watching things as they unfolded. But really what struck me when I came into the United States, to observe firsthand the process, I mean, what struck me was, the way and manner, the process went. I mean, it was quite a peaceful, in fact, not quite, very peaceful process, in spite of the campaigns of mudslinging from both candidates, on the run-up to the election, or in the run-up to the election, particularly in the early voting process, which I also had a chance to witness, it was a very remarkable one. And people went about their business, going in, casting their ballots, compared to what we have in parts of Africa where, you can always feel the tension, it's in the air, security, operatives like, armed to the teeth, and all of that. But, kudos to the American voters who really, kept a cool head, if I might say, in spite of everything.
Tensions. Exactly. Now, soon after the elections, we saw that there have been protests all over the country, particularly in the big cities. Some in Africa may say, whoa, this looks very much like an African country. But really, what do you make of them?
Well, it's quite sad, Vincent, I have to say. But, when you look at it deeply, it did come as a shock to many of us, for most people around the world and even in Africa, because everyone had already, had this preferred candidate at the back of their minds that, look, this is going to be Hillary's for the taking. But it didn't happen, So in America, too, the same thing. But you ask yourself the question, let's switch it, let's switch the roles. If Hillary Clinton had gotten the nod to become the president, of course, perhaps the supporters of Donald Trump would have staged a protest. Now, it's okay, it's okay to stage your grievances.
But, great lessons for Africa, right?
Great lessons indeed for Africa, which means that, it's not something peculiar, to what happens in parts of Africa, but you can even have it in the United States, these sort of disagreements and protests.
Remarkable that peace is maintained anyway in the long run. The country stays intact.
That's right.
Thank you very much for sharing with us.
Thank you so
your
much.
thoughts, Ayetunde. Well, that's Ayetunde Balogun talking to us about his observations here, and we do thank you very much for joining us today on Africa 54.
An effort to save Egypt's economy from collapsing saw the country's central bank take a decision to allow its currency float freely, and that was to pave way for a $12 billion loan from the IMF. The import-dependent country has been fraught with a lack of foreign currency, reduced imports of daily consumables and job cuts. The government says it's working hard to avoid an economic disaster. But many Egyptians are complaining of the impact of the decision on their cost of living. Take a look.
In recent months, Egypt, an import-dependent country, has been facing foreign currency and food shortages, coupled with an inflation rate of 18%. Following the central bank's decision to float the pound and a hike in fuel prices, Egyptians say they are in a dire situation.
People are hungry. There is no food. Those who have kids, what do they do? Do they sell their kids? What should they do with them? Those who have 4, 5 kids, what do they do? Should they sell one of them? People are fed up.
The devaluation promises to attract fresh capital into the country and end a hard currency shortage that has plagued the economy for years. While most economists and businessmen praise the move to float the pound on the basis that it is long overdue, ordinary citizens are opposed to it. Before the government's decision, there was calls for a nationwide protest, but no organized political group or activists are aligning with the call.
I don't think the calls to protest are real. And hopefully nothing is going to happen on November 11 because the country is already in ruins. You want to go out and protest so that we can sink to what level? Even if protests happen, who will come to power? What will we achieve?
Unlike a few years ago, protests are no longer commonplace in Egypt, but the people believe the float will hurt those most in need.
The float will affect the poor. Of course not those who are well off who don't care, but the poor will be the ones crushed by it. The middle class has already been crushed, so that's the problem with floating the pound, and the prices will get even higher.
Despite the absence of any signs of protests yet, the Abdel Fattah al-Sisi government is determined to ensure peace and security. The Interior Ministry has cancelled all holidays for police officers and is on high alert. Suspicious activities are to be reported to the authorities.
Well, time now for a short break, but before we do, a reminder to visit our website, channelstv.com, for all the latest information around the clock. You can also find us on youtube.com/channelsweb. Well, still to come on Africa 54. 1,000 young African leaders went to the United States to study this year through the Mandela Washington Fellowship Program. We'll learn about one of them and his special skills after the break.